You're listening to The Real Deal Conversations, a podcast designed to encourage, inspire, and equip you by sharing real stories and meaningful conversations that bring real life to the surface. I'm your host, Megan Deal. Let's dive in. This week, I am with Chelsey Bode, the CEO, president of Pearson-Kelly Technology. And Chelsey has been in Kanata Report. It's a magazine out of New York, right?
Correct,
she was top 3 women influencers in the nation industry for technology. And for Springfield Business Journal, she was named top advisor for tech. She was in Springfield Business Journal's 40 Under 40. And also, Pearson-Kelly was named in the Dynamic Dozen Award for fastest growing company in the Springfield metro area. And I am so excited to talk to you, Chelsey, today.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. It's fun to get to hear some of this stuff back, too, because sometimes you don't slow down enough when you're out in the fast-paced world, and it makes me smile. I'm like, okay, we are doing some things.
Yeah. No, it's so exciting. And I heard, just to give you guys some background, I heard Chelsey do a talk at a NICSA chamber event called Working Women in NICSA. This is where I met her and where I heard her for the first time. And it was so, as a female listener, it was so powerful and impactful to hear what she had to say. I've actually implemented some of the things that she has or that she did speak on. And immediately after it was over, I was like, man, I have to have her on the show. And so I talked to you about that. And then also was like, I need her, I just need to be friends with her. So
thank you, Megan.
Yeah. So I was like, man. So anyway, so I'm so excited. One of the things that I wanted you to come on to connect with our female listeners in leadership is your experience as a female, as a leader, a CEO, in a very male-dominated industry. So, kind of tell me about that.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride, and the ride's still going. But going back, my actual background's in fashion merchandising and marketing, and so that's what my degrees are in. Okay. Technology is kind of funny. It found me, but it has a lot of the same similarities as fashion. So it's still fast-paced, lots of projecting, forecasting numbers, and the speed of the play, I guess, if you will, is pretty similar. So I found myself loving tech. My dad and I have worked very diligently over the years, and so I've definitely had some experiences to where I was odd man out, if you will, no pun intended.
Yeah.
And it's kind of been fun for me though, because I do love to live my life in a pattern interrupt type mold, or if somebody says you can't do something, it doesn't mean I always can, but it makes me want to try and understand why I can't. And that's always been a bit of an inspiration to me when you kind of get some shade. So I've definitely had a lot of those opportunities over the last several years.
But I love that it motivates you and keeps you going, because I think it is easy for females to shrink themselves. And I think the hardest thing is combating wanting to shrink back, wanting to make yourself smaller to fit in, to fit the mold. Well, I'm going to be who these people need me to be, and that is make myself small so that I can somehow advance. And that's not the way it works. And I love that you don't shrink back. And so one of her stories that she shared, and she's going to share it here momentarily, is how she is mistaken as a male leader. So kind of tell us about that. Tell us about, being in the male industry and being on stage.
Sure. Actually, another funny story that I haven't even shared with you, and when you said been mistaken, there was one of our reps from one of the manufacturers that we partner with that actually got fired because his boss basically knew that he hadn't been really attending to our account, and he had basically called out his direct report and said, Chelsey Bode hasn't even met you, and why have you not been down to Springfield to their dealership? And he goes, who in the world is he, and why would he even say that? I'm like, Chelsey isn't even my daughter's name is Ryan, so I get it, but Chelsey's just not one of those. I mean, that's how shocking it is at times. The other story that I think you liked was we had an acquisition a couple years ago, and we were myself and then my male CFO and male president were all in town to basically announce the acquisition and answer any questions for the employees that would now be working for a new organization and new leadership. And we were super excited. Accidentally, I was standing, there was no intent on us standing on opposite sides of the room. We were trying to just be more fluid with the group of people, but I was standing on one side when the previous owners announced the acquisition, and my CFO and president were standing on the other side of the room. And as soon as they said, we've decided to sell, we think you're going to love the new owner, everyone in the room shifted and looked at the two men. And they're like, guys, it's her. Yeah. And so you could get really... to your point of shrinking, it'd be easy to get fixated on that and be upset with it. I've just learned to kind of find it funny and then just also kind of feel sorry for people that, automatically go there, and hopefully through, some conversation and just education really with people, or conversations like this, hoping that maybe people will kind of wake up and be a little bit more aware.
And so you had to learn that. You had to learn to kind of get in that mindset. But in the beginning, what are some things that you would, perspective or things you would tell yourself, or is there anybody you would look at that would empower you to develop that ability to just kind of shrug it off, laugh it off, be like, what you just said, like, what did that look like in the beginning?
So I think you have to be very confident first in your personal brand. Who are you? Are you comfortable in your own skin? Because if you can't be comfortable or confident with yourself, because you're going to get thrown lots of curveballs, lots of them. I still get them daily. Yeah. But just knowing that you can be okay with that, you can be okay when someone doesn't think like you think or challenges different viewpoints. And so once you can establish that for yourself and then kind of figure out where your personal brand fits, then I think it's important to find influencers and mentors, maybe other peers in other marketplaces, so you don't have all the, Midwest minutia. Like, you get to hear that same stuff is going on in New York and in LA and in Chicago and Springfield, Missouri. So finding people that can relate, but also can bring different perspective, that it's a bigger world than sometimes I think we feel like. We feel like the world's all centered around our woes, and it's just not the case.
No. But I do agree. It's like that power of connection and just knowing, I'm not the only one that experienced it. That's for me. Like, anytime I am like, oh my gosh, this sucks, or this hurts, or this is uncomfortable, I tend to go and find perspective by hearing somebody else who has gone through something similar. I don't even have to know that person. I don't even have to... they could be, a celebrity, I don't know, like a business person, whatever. But I will go like research, okay, who has gone through this? And just the fact that they've gone through that and they're still doing what they're doing and growing is enough for me to go, yeah, I can brush it off, and it's that power of connection and perspective. Who are some of your mentors? Who are some of the people that you have looked to?
Well, not to sound cliche, but to be cliche, my father, he and I, we got to be partners for about 10 years together. And he was a blessing for different reasons, because he had so much experience and wisdom, but also did a really good job of wanting the new ideas and some of the craze that my young mind brought to the table. And so he pushed me in a lot of ways that I don't even know that he realized. He tried to let me have my own way, but then would kind of jump in and coach as needed, and sometimes push me further than I would have pushed myself, just because I think he sometimes believed in me more than I did myself. There's been great individuals here locally. Kirk Elmquist comes to mind. He's been a huge fan and friend for the last 20 years. And I got a text from him over this last weekend on just a little snapshot of the SBJ's like biggest technology companies. Yeah. And he's like, awesome job, girl. You're the only CEO on here and you're number 5. Like it's just so people that just know, like, even when you don't know that you need those things, finding people that can be your cheerleader, be in your corner, but also, if you are going through a tough time, have a different perspective on that conversation. If it's an employee and I can't see straight of what the right decision is. Somebody that's been doing it a little longer, grouping someone that's in the industry, someone that's not in the industry, someone that has more experience, someone that's not over-experienced to where they have that fresh perspective and kind of that other outside the box way of thinking, I think is extremely important as you try to figure out that iron sharpens iron dynamic for your own journey.
Yes. Iron sharp. That's what, I always tell people, I will seek out people who are strong where I am weak. I will actively be looking. Like if I'm in a room.
That's cool.
Yeah. Like if I'm in a room with people that iron sharpens iron, and I will be like, my assistant, Cecily, she's so much more than assistant. She's so much more than an assistant. But I hired her because she has so many strengths where I'm not strong. And I'm like, man, I really want that. And she's honestly like a sister to me. And I want that to rub off. Like we are who we surround ourselves with. And I want to be sharpened. I don't want to stay. I don't want to just stay where I'm at, even if it's good. I don't ever want to stay there. And so I will. And one of the reasons that I saw it after you, I was like, wow, there was things that you set up there. I was like, I need that. I need that in my life, And so I think it is so powerful to find people who can sharpen you and actively seek them out and have the awkward conversation of, hey, I want you in my circle. And placing them there, being intentional about placing them there, and those mentors and finding those people.
Oh, yeah. I think another really important thing to hit on while we're talking about leadership qualities, you just described yourself as looking, where you're not good and trying to surround yourself by somebody that can kind of fill that gap. That is a huge attribute to leadership when you can have that introspect and realize, like, am I getting in my employees' way? What are the 3 biggest things I bring to the organization, and then how do I make sure that we hire other people that can fill those gaps or fill those voids? So I think sometimes it's good to compliment or stretch you in that way, but I think other times it's good for you just to know, like, I'm never going to be a project manager because I've got this amazing visionary brain, and I'm kind of speaking like I'm you right now. Yeah. And so then find your project manager and don't beat yourself up trying to be something that, because you're probably never going to be a good project manager, right? But you bring so much value to that great mind of vision.
Yeah, no, that is so good and so true. So I avoid conflict. And so I like to put people in my circle who have the ability to do that. Yes. Because I need to learn how to handle people being super direct and not taking it personally, which I've gotten so much better at. I mean, this is just one example. Like there's so many others, but one example is just like conflict and handling that, and then also learning how to be direct. Actually, being direct isn't my problem. It's finding a way to be direct and not sounding like a jerk. That's my problem, which is actually why I shy away from conflict, because I don't know how to do it in like a constructive way. Do you know what I'm saying? So anyway, so many things to learn. And so putting people in, that is so true though, that you said, like, we don't have to be everything, and that's okay. And to be able to grow and manage it, but it doesn't have to be our strength. It doesn't have to be our. So I think that's so good.
But understanding that is the key, because a lot of people don't understand or won't take the time to say, hey, here's where I do have some gaps. It's like you can work yourself out into a frenzy and it's really counterproductive. Yeah.
And feel like, I think too, a female in the space, feel like you have to be everything. Otherwise you're going to miss opportunity. And I do think that is something of, as a female, I don't know, I can't speak for everybody, but it is easy to wear yourself thin, feeling like everything, you have to do everything. Otherwise, a missed opportunity is just that. It'll be, whereas sometimes it feels like for men, it's a little easier and they can pick and choose a little more. Whereas sometimes the mindset, I think, for females is, well, I have to spread myself then, otherwise I'm not going to be seen the way they are, the way men are in that leadership space. I mean, so I don't know.
For sure. I mean, a man doesn't get pressure to be at the kids', holiday party or, at the lunchroom. So I think there's a lot of just natural pressure to where, we have a good conversation and dialogue with our kids, but it's still very difficult to try to play like the mom persona and then also the professional life. And then even if, and my husband doesn't put pressure, and I really don't feel like my kids put pressure on me, but I put the pressure on myself. Because it's what I saw modeled growing up. So it just feels like that's what it should look like. And it doesn't look that way. Yeah. So that's,
I think Daniel, my husband, so he really picks up where I have slacked because of how busy I've been. And we've been married for 15 years, and he said, the first 10 years or whatever, over a decade, he goes, you took a back seat so that I can get to where I am. He's like, it's my turn to take a back seat so that you can get to where you want to be. And so he cooks, he cleans, he does all the things.
Real partner.
Yes. But at the same time, there is always that in the back of my head guilt of, but should I be? You know what I'm saying? Like there's this guilt. There is exactly what you said. Or the kids, when they have an issue, when they need to talk something deep, when they need to work through something, it is me. That's me. That's the natural. But then I'm so exhausted. And it's like this, it's how do you balance wanting to get to your achievements and keep doing. I'm a visionary, so my mind is always popping off of these things that I want to do and add. And how do you balance it all? I don't know, and I don't.
You don't
know. Exactly.
You don't, and then you have to just be comfortable with. It's never going to be balanced.
Yeah. And I think too, you had something in here. So how do you you just said we don't, and I honestly agree with that. I don't know if there's ever an answer for that. But how do you manage to balance being everything for everybody? I mean, women do. We are mom, we are wife, we are career. So what do you do? Kind of what's your structure like?
Yeah, I've tried. I'm not very disciplined. I always say that I have an optimistic time management issue. So I'm like, I think being late's really rude. So I try really hard to change my ways. But my natural tendency is to procrastinate and think I can get, 5,000 pounds of rocks into a 5-pound bag. It's so owning that, but also then coming up with little tricks that can help. So I have my own internal rule that I'll only do 3 type of annual volunteer gigs per year. And so then when I tell myself, okay, no, I've said yes 3 times, it makes it easy for me to say no, or easier, I guess I should say. It's still difficult, but you then at least have some framework for where your time is allocated. So I'd say forcing yourself to kind of look at that year and say, what are my obligations for kids' sports? What are my obligations to the company? What are my obligations to being a friend? And then now we can start figuring out, is that 1 volunteer opportunity? Is it 3? And then is that at the school? Is that on a community board? Is that on a national board? Where is the impact that you're wanting to get? What are those deliverables that you want? So the more I think you can kind of get little tricks or insights and understand where you want to allocate your time, helps you be okay saying no.
Yeah.
How many days do I want to sit and just stare at the wall?
I know. Yeah.
Calendar those in.
I know. No, I think that's so good. That's one of the takeaways that I had from when you did speak at the chamber. I was like, oh, that's because I have a really hard time saying no. No is not it's just not in my language. I am getting better at it. We talked about that. I've just kind of really rearranged. I stepped away from being on staff at Big Bro to being a board member. That's very doable. Once a month meeting and the occasional things in between, super doable. 40 hours a week when I'm also speaking and podcasting and mom, and it wasn't doable. And so it is learning to say no. But I think when you have people in your circle or friends or mentors that empower you to say no, because it's easy to say no and then walk back on it because all the guilt comes in of, but could I have done that? I don't want to let them down. I don't want people to think that I'm rude. And it's all these things that can get in the way. So I think it's really important to have people, like you or like your mentors, if you're listening, to be there to hold you accountable in an empowering way and remind you it's okay to say no.
Totally.
Don't walk back on it. It's okay to say no. Oh, somebody thought you were rude? That's not your problem. I can...
And you need clarity breaks too. So, just because you have the time, your personal time needs to be, like I was saying, calendared too, because I think that's where you get yourself trapped.
Yeah.
Because you think, well, I technically could do this, but then you're not effective to all the other commitments that you've already done because you've not had that clarity break to really let your mind wander. And
that's what I learned this last year. I think the biggest thing I learned this last year is success is not how much you're doing.
Yeah.
And I really had to learn that the hard way, because if I'm doing all these things and it looks successful to people on the outside, it's like, oh man, she's doing this and this and this. But if I can't lead in my home first because I'm burnt out and fried, like my brain is fried, and I'm not even present because I'm scrolling, because I'm just trying to like zone out from all the things I'm doing.
Yes.
I'm not really successful. I don't care how much I'm doing and how much impact it's making. If I can't lead where it is most important first, it's nothing.
I think it comes back to your legacy, too. I got to hear Greg Horton, one of the former owners of Integrity Home Care, right after they got into that little plane crash that should have killed them all.
Oh, yeah.
And, it was such a compelling presentation at Rotary on just like all of a sudden it's like, if I'm gone... in a snap, like, what is my legacy? What did I leave? And so you're exactly right. If we're running around trying to do all these things for other people that aren't impactful because we're not slowing down to figure out what we actually want to do to, we get to write our own legacy, essentially.
Yeah.
And that's also helpful, kind of being okay with the no. Like, I will have more impact in these areas if I do them in a smaller quantity and very, very well.
And I think, too, I wonder if that is where some of, like, kids grow up feeling like their parents are hypocrites because they saw their parents doing everything for the world and then coming home and being burnt out, and that's where the parents are shutting down. I don't ever want to be that.
Right.
And I was starting to become that. And I was like, I have to reassess everything, and that's when I just started eliminating and going, here we go. What is going to be effective, but also allow me to be a human being at my best for my family so that my kids know mom is who she is regardless, and we're not getting the burn ends of her.
That's awesome.
And so, that all came in that, what is success actually? And that's where everything just, I just started eliminating. And I think that's okay. It's learning and reassessing and being okay and giving yourself grace and not being like, I can't believe that I got to that point. Okay, but what are you going to do about it?
Sure.
And give yourself grace that for a while you weren't at your best, and then doing what you need to do to move forward. So anyway.
Another thing that I think is really important, that I like to share when you've asked like who's been a model or a mentor or whatnot, I think we have to be very, very careful as females, and especially strong females in leadership, that we do things like this today and we are holding each other up, because I will tell you, and I've seen it in a lot of my friends that are also females, some of the biggest naysayers, most competitive, backstabbing individuals through my career thus far have been females.
Yep.
And so I think because of all the stress and everything, it's been crazy to see, even though these, stories of people thinking I'm a man or whatever, that's where I can kind of laugh it off, because I'm like, man, the people that have been in my life that have really helped move me forward have generally been men. There's been great females too, but I just hear more and more stories of how we're competing with each other, and it's just not necessary.
I agree. I there is not one part of that I disagree with. Yes. And actually, it's kind of like that mindset. And I would encourage you as females, because what Chelsey just said is so ridiculously true and unfortunate. And we are in a competitive space already because we're female. We already have like the disadvantage. And so when the people who are supposed to be cheering you on and lifting you up are competing, it's really hard. And I can't tell you, when I was looking for mentors, it was mostly men.
Yeah.
Because it is so hard to find a female mentor. I would like reach out to certain people and get nothing. Or very minimal. And you could tell what the underlying root was. And it was like, dude, I'm not trying to compete with you.
Yeah.
Like, I'm genuinely saying, like, this is a hard space. It's exhausting. Sometimes I just want a female to go, man, I get that. I get that feeling. I get that. Honestly, I could cry because it is such a very real thing. You know what I mean? And I always encourage people. I just did a talk on this to a group of women. And the way the brain works is it only accepts a thought, because like thoughts are not true. They're made up of everything around us. I mean, some thoughts are true, but anyway, when a negative thought comes to your mind, you actually have the power to for your brain to accept it as truth or not. And the only way your brain accepts a thought as truth is through repetition and reinforcement. And so when you are repeating a competitive thought that's negative and unhealthy towards somebody, your brain is now accepting that as truth. And the reinforcement is whether or not you're going to act on that. And so I always I've started to tell people, and myself, I do this too. When I get a competitive thought with a female, I go, no, everything, I'm faith-based, so everything's a little spiritual to me, but I go, no, you don't get a chance to cause discord in my circle. This thought doesn't get an opportunity. This thought doesn't get an opportunity to cause discord between somebody that I respect. And just because they're moving in this direction and I'm not at the moment, that's somebody that I need to serve. And the way that I can do that, and the way women, if you as you're listening, the way you can put a thought as truth is to send a text. You have to reinforce it. Send a text. How can I encourage you? For me, it's how can I pray for you? Is there anything I can do to serve you in your busy season? Or give them a compliment. And then you're taking control of your thoughts. You're taking control of your circle and whether or not it's healthy or not. And that text or that phone call for an encouraging word, a congratulations, a how can I serve you, that's the reinforcement that is allowing your brain to go, oh, this is the truth, not the competitive thought.
That's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And
now
so,
you've challenged me.
Yeah.
I have some texting to do.
I've done it though. I've done it.
Yeah.
I actually, in the last month, there was something, and it wasn't even that they had done something, but it's that I don't even remember what it was. They had done something and I felt like, they were moving forward in some way. Anyway, but I remember going, no, absolutely not am I going to allow this thought to root in me, because the root is our mindset. And so whatever we water, it's going to make that root stronger. It's going to make our mindset stronger or weaker.
Right.
And so I text her and I said, hey, is there anything I can pray for you? Is there anything? And it was genuine. It wasn't like, and the thing is, when we do stuff like that, and there was another research thing out there that when we encourage people, it releases dopamine in our brain. And so when we encourage people, it makes us happier, which is true. Because anytime that I've ever had a negative thought, competitive thought, anything like that, I've never felt happy after it.
Yeah.
Like I've always felt worse. Like it just...
So you start comparing, and it just takes you down
move me forward.
Yeah.
So anyway, I agree with you. I think us women, we do need to start doing better, and be more intentional, and allow ourselves to take back control of our mindset and how we see other women. Yeah. So anyway, okay. So in your leadership, so being in a male-dominated industry, we've kind of gone through that. We've gone through how do you balance everything. What would you say for women in leadership? What is some things that you have learned? Some mistakes that you have learned through? How do you navigate that? How do you, not so much mistakes necessarily, but like challenges. How do you navigate that? How do you move forward in challenges? What advice would you give to other female leaders who are navigating a challenge in their office, in their home, in their life? How would you do that?
Sure. So I'm an avid Audible listener. I don't usually have time to actually read, but I love to walk and just throw in my earbuds. And anyhow, so I think there's a book for everything. So you can usually find some type of leadership or business book, or even, how to handle thoughts or whatever. It's out there, and it's really good.
Yeah.
There's one I'm going through right now called Primal Leadership, and it's all about IQ versus EQ, and how sometimes like an employee that has a higher EQ is more valuable and actually more productive in running teams than someone with a higher IQ. And so trying to find and figure out through building teams and things like that, I think that there's a lot of literature out there that you should definitely all take advantage of. The other thing is like view obstacles as opportunities. So I think one of the things in that presentation during my procrastination years that I'm not out of yet, we ordered our Christmas cards like the last possible week that they could be in for the company, and they came in superimposed from the printer, and there was not enough time to reprint them. It already looked kind of tacky when we were sending them out. It was a close call to begin with, and so everyone's all up in arms, and I started looking at it, and I was like, we should do a selfie competition where they have to take a picture in the mirror, and like we did some big screen TVs, and that sounds old school. Now I'm thinking of a tube TV. But no, we did some really fun prizes, and so it helped engagement, and companies were all getting involved, and it added to our social media, and it was a disaster that turned into something that we reprinted for the next 4 years because it was so fun and people loved that. So I think that's the other thing too. Like, use resources. We can't figure it all out. Somebody's been through it. So whether that's the mentor or if it's a book, but then also just don't take life so serious. Take that challenge and then figure out how to smash it.
Yeah. No, I love that. Okay. Family integration.
Oof. I'm still working on that one.
This is good, though. I love this. I'm a big believer that what and I know you're about to talk about this, but I'm a big believer in this too. Like what your family can do with you, let them do it. So talk about that family integration and the impact it's had on your family. How has that positively influenced your family dynamic by doing family integration in your fast-paced life?
Sure. I grew up where dad worked, mom stayed home. We knew that that's how the bills got paid and everything like that. I also, from the business community when I was little, it was hard to be a woman in business if you're having kids because you had to be at the office at 7:55 and there was a lot of pressure and taking work home with you. And so that's where I go back and say, the partnership or my dad being such an influence to me, he really got over what he was trained to be as a leader and said, okay, well, maybe there is a better way. Maybe we can make some of these changes and have a little bit more work-life integration as opposed to just this work-life balance that was still the old way of doing like business. And so it became a huge passion of mine to, if I'm going to have kids and I'm going to have a career and I want a growing business. And so it's never, the day that you say it's going to be better next year is the first and last lie. It's not correct. There's always something. It just became a priority that I still wanted to have kids. It was going to look a little differently. Definitely have a lot of help from Craig's side. And he runs his own wealth management practice. And so he's not a help in the business. So we're all hands on deck. So going back, we've done things like when we acquired the Arkansas location and we were adding our logo and everything, we had a little soccer tournament out in Fayetteville that weekend. Had my son grab pizza, paint, and he helped us paint the walls. And we could have hired that out, but we thought they need to see some elbow grease too. We've had them hand out little client appreciation, donuts or cookies or dress up on St. Patty's Day, like something that there's not as much hype. Like Christmas, everybody's flooding the conference rooms with lots of fun gifts. So we try to do something a little bit different and look at maybe more of those off holidays and then send them out into the community and get to be part of what we do every day. And so we do a lot of things that aren't perfect, but that is one thing that I've been really proud. And I think they both do understand what we do for a living. They ask lots of questions. We have a little rule at our house. that for every dollar that they invest, we'll match it, but they can't touch it until they're 21.
Oh, I love that.
So they have their own little stock portfolios, get to ask my husband lots of questions. My son saved up more than I thought he was going to be able to when we set that parameter. But it's been fun things to kind of just open up the dialogue and make it fun for them too.
Yes. Oh, that's so good. I'm gonna do that.
Do it. It's been great.
Yeah.
And knowing that they can't touch it, but then they started asking for cash, and they get to an age where you're just clearing junk out constantly, and it's like, not to say junk, but they'll play with whatever it is for a very short season, and then you're like, you invested all this money. So this is actually making them be a little more. Oh,
I love that. That's a really good idea. I'm going to do that. Do you do like a bank account for them, or is it?
So the investments, Craig does that piece of it.
Oh, yeah, 'cause he's
but if you've ever heard of the green light card, and no, I don't get kickbacks from dropping their name.
I do. Yes.
It's really cool. So it's like a debit card that you can hook to your bank account, and you can set up the kids' chores. You can also set up parameters, like it forces 20% of anything that they earn with their allowance over to the savings portion that they can't spend it on.
Really?
You can cut it down. It gives you a notification every time they're at Five Below. So it's really, that's been cool. And you can do it as like, if they have 10 chores that they're supposed to get done, you can say, okay, if you only get 70% of the chores done, then you only get 70% of your allowance. And that's one of the things I like, and I think that we lose sight of, like feeling, and we get guilty because we're at work all the time. And it's like, no, if you're going to put in the work, this is what it looks like, and this is how you're going to get money. And no, we're not going to go get a snack every single day after school on our dime. Like, you need to contribute to it, the household.
No, I like that. I mean, my kids do chores and stuff, but I don't think I've ever thought about doing in that way. I think that's really good. And not touching it until they're 21. I think that's where we need to implement that.
The part,
I mean, Oh, gosh, anyway. I have one that saves and one that doesn't. And then, and then the other one, it's a whole thing. I got 3 kids. You have 2.
I have 2, 10 and 13.
Okay.
But the 10-year-old was a saver, but then when his sister started seeing, like, what he was accumulating, then she's so competitive that now she's kind of changed her behavior a little bit. So it's internal competition.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. My kids are annoyingly competitive.
Yeah.
Like, competitive in the sense of, like, can we just do one thing without arguing over how competitive you guys
are? For sure, yes.
Anyway, but ours are 15. So Eli's 15, Ellie's 12, and then Ethan's 8.
Okay.
And if you ever want to know anything about our family, you just talk to the 8-year-old, because he has zero filter.
That is our 10-year-old.
Yes. I'm like, stop talking right now. Gosh. Anyway, it's fine.
They ask you questions and catch you in a weak spot. Like, how much did this cost?
Yeah.
And then you're like, wait a second, this is a trap. Now you have intel.
Or like when you're like, hey, buddy, like, I don't want to spend that much. That's a really expensive toy just for a random outing. And then it's like, oh, so we're poor.
Yeah.
Or I just don't want to
credit card.
Yeah, I know. Or we just don't want to spend $40 on a toy because we went to Walmart to get soap.
Right. You need to hear no too.
Yeah. Anyway, so, okay. Chelsey, what would you say, what is some nuggets of encouragement or a lesson or a takeaway in some form that you want to leave with listeners in leadership in the female space to encourage them or empower them on their journey? And you can think about it.
Okay. Yeah, so something that has resonated with me this year in particular has been a mentor that I incorporated into our annual meeting. He's the CEO of British Petroleum out in Texas. So I think he's got about 20,000 employees. He's busy. It's probably not going to live a long life. But he said one thing when he was giving some leadership feedback: don't ever underestimate the shadow that you cast. And so what he was saying by that is, when he was leading, he would kind of want like more buy-in from people at times, and or didn't really understand the power when he said this is what needs to happen that he had. And I've started looking at some of my behaviors at the office, and there's times that I just need to step up and be the boss or be very careful about what's coming out of my mouth because it can be so much more damaging than what I think I'm communicating. And so it's brought a different level. I tend to think of myself as being pretty introspective, and this was something that I've missed. And so I think, just being confident, knowing your personal brand, don't underestimate the position. Like, you've earned this, whatever you're doing. If you're a sole contributor and you're not in leadership, that's still leadership in its own way. And so you can be a sole contributor and still have all of this resonate. And or if you're leading teams, it can be exhausting, and that's okay too. And no one has it perfect. And so that's my 2 cents.
That's so good. Chelsey, thank you so much for coming on. It has been an awesome conversation, and I really hope that our female listeners, I hope you guys are empowered and knowing, hey, Chelsey is local. Like, this is a powerhouse in our community. So if you're local too, like, Chelsey's local. Maybe if you're truly, I don't know, just networking event or something, hopefully you guys can run into Chelsey and walk up and high five her and introduce yourselves to her. So anyway, Chelsey, thank you.
Thank you so much, Megan. You're such an encouragement.
Thank you.